In towns and cities across Canada, fire is a fact of life. A powerful force that brings with it death and destruction. Tuesday, October 25th, 1960. In the city of Windsor, Ontario, it's a bright, clear day, unusually warm for this time of year. At the Metropolitan Department Store, the main floor lunch counter at the rear of the building is busy as usual.
There were a lot of people that shopped there regularly, and they would come to the Met for lunch, meet their friends at the Met.
It's like a dime store, sort of, what we used to call a dime store. It was like Woolworths and Kresge's.
28-year-old waitress Anne-Marie Proteus has been working at the store for just over 2 months. Married at 17 and already divorced, she is trying to build a new life for herself and her 2 children. Another Anne-Marie, 30-year-old Anne-Marie MacDonald, works in the souvenir department not far from the lunch counter.
Well, I was waiting on customers, cashiering, taking care of the candy counter when the girl was on her breaks. Halloween was coming up, so there was costumes and ghosts and things like that.
Despite warm temperatures outside, inside the store is unusually cold and has been for several days. Heating contractors have been in the basement boiler room, installing a gas heating unit to replace the old coal-fired furnace. It's particularly cold for those working on the second floor, where the stockroom and offices are located.
And they were working on that boiler for a while. And I heard my manager, Mr. Halford, saying that he's losing business because it's cold in the store. So he wanted to get this done.
Little has changed by the time 21-year-old stock clerk Larry Levesque returns from lunch, except that now he notices more than just a chill in the air.
I smelled the scent of gas. And I went to the office, and Gail Petnato was there, and she said to me, Larry, are we going to get heat today? And I said, either we're going to get some heat or you're going to go up in the air. We're all going to go up in the air.
By 2 p.m., the store is experiencing an early afternoon lull. There are just over 70 shoppers in the store, mostly women, and 34 staff. Eileen Bea is shopping with her mother and 2 preschool children.
My mother went down into the basement where there were sewing notions and things, and I wandered around with the kids. I was carrying my son, and my little girl was walking.
At the lunch counter, the noon-hour crowd has dwindled from 60 to 15. Ella Miles manages an ice cream shop close by and comes in every day for a snack before work. She has attended 2 funerals in the last week and tells a coworker that when the Lord takes her, she hopes he does it quickly. Customers watch a waitress fuss over the coffee machine, apparently having trouble lighting the gas burner. She has been smelling gas since lunch, and it seems to be getting worse. She checks around the coffee urns, but the smell seems to be coming from the walls. In the basement boiler room, Larry Levesque and store manager Joe Halford watch as heating contractor Charles Ingram and assistant Howard Schramm try to light the gas furnace. Both workmen pride themselves on being able to detect gas using only sense of smell.
I was leaning on the wooden ladder, and Mr. Halford was about maybe 5 feet away from me. And Howard Schramm was down on the furnace using his nose to smell the gas. And he lit a match, and he said there was nothing, he had no gas.
Both Levesque and Halford hear a hissing sound coming from the furnace, but the pilot still won't light. The workmen use a large pipe wrench to uncouple the main line leading to the meter to make sure gas is coming in from the outside. Halford and Levesque smell an odor so foul that Halford decides to leave and check the kitchen next door. Something tells Larry Levesque that he should follow. It is 2:10 p.m. At the lunch counter, waitress Anne-Marie Proteus smells gas and decides to alert her boss. Salesgirl Patricia Graves is on her way to the offices on the second floor.
I was working at the Met in men's wear. My boss sent me upstairs for change.
Anne-Marie McDonald moves to the candy counter near the front of the store, while the regular salesgirl takes her break.
And a lady had come and she wanted some Halloween candy, and I got it for her, and she paid me, and I give her her change, and then she said, "Oh, I'll have some jelly beans, half-pound jelly beans." I can remember it so clear.
Outside, 22-year-old reporter Walter McCall drives past the Metropolitan.
I'd been working at the Windsor Star for just a couple of months. I was on a day off, and I was going to downtown Windsor to do a little shopping.
Kathleen Hebert and her mother-in-law arrive downtown. They plan to show off Kathleen's new baby to friends a few doors down from the Met. It is 2:11 p.m. In the basement, Larry Levesque hears a commotion in the area where the two heating contractors are working.
And I heard like some screaming, like, hollering. That didn't sound right. And then I saw Mr. Halford with the poking his eyes like he was afraid, scared. And then all of a sudden I heard I saw fingers like lightning coming from that Quebec heater in the corner. I had one time to put my right hand up and my coat was torn right off of me. And all my hair was burnt and my face was all burnt.
It wasn't bang, it was poof. Only it was just deafening. It was like the air was sucked out of the building.
It knocked me down. I recall looking at lifesavers falling like in slow motion.
At the front of the store, plate glass windows disintegrate into a million pieces, blasting across the street, slashing and slicing everything in their path.
I just happened to be glancing at my rearview and I saw all this stuff flying across the road. Then you could see smoke and increasingly heavy smoke. When I said, something's happened here.
Harold Kane is stopped at a red light in front of the store.
All of a sudden, boom, the car shook like that. And I happened to look over there and all this glass come flying out. There was a few cars parked on both sides of Olette Avenue. And you hear this pop, pop, pop with the glass was hitting the tires, flattening the tires.
At the rear of the building, the explosion causes the roof and 2 floors to collapse into the basement.
My immediate reaction was they must be just knocking the building down. And but then while I'm looking at it, I could see people in the back wall and the floor. You could see the floor was coming down too. It was just devastating.
Many of those at the front of the store aren't yet aware of the destruction at the back. The street looks like a war zone.
The street was completely littered, probably ankle deep in debris, merchandise from the store. The windows were all blown out. There were people cut and injured that had been hit by flying glass.
As we approached the store, there was a lady sitting on the sidewalk in shock. She had her legs straight out, sitting on the sidewalk with her ear in her hand. And she had blood running down her face, and she was just in shock.
The woman is Kathleen Hebert, her left ear completely severed by flying glass. Her mother-in-law lies nearby, still clutching her infant grandson.
There was one lady that I had known, worked in the ice cream store out on Wyandotte Street. And she was laying there, and I went over and tried to get her to talk. And she didn't say anything, and a fireman came in. I says, "I think this lady's dead."
The woman is Ella Miles, killed instantly in the blast. As she had wished earlier that day, the Lord has taken her quickly.
Right away, you could tell this was very, very serious. There was a lot of, obviously a lot of injuries here. The strange thing, there was nobody coming out of the place.
For Walter McCall, the choice is clear. If no one is coming out, then they will have to go in. Tuesday, October 25th, 1960. An explosion at the Metropolitan Department Store in downtown Windsor, Ontario, shatters a bright autumn afternoon. Outside, police and firefighters arrive to help those already at the scene tend to the injured and the dead. Inside, the once brightly lit store is a black void, a ruin of broken plaster and concrete. Customers and staff are either trapped or looking for a way out.
Everything went pitch black and quiet, got very quiet. And I had my son in my arms and then heard my daughter screaming. And she wasn't right beside me, she wasn't with me. And when she was quiet, I sort of half whispered to her her name, and I reached out and she took my hand, and so I had them both.
I couldn't smell gas. I could smell dust. And there's all this dust falling, and all the wires hanging down. Really, really looked spooky, eh? And the Halloween stuff that was on the end of the counter, that was just hanging, and freaked me out.
As Anne-Marie MacDonald picks her way through the wreckage, she realizes how lucky she is to have been working at the candy counter instead of her usual post in the souvenir department at the back of the store.
They had built a platform, and they had all the stuff, all the toys, the kids' toys on top. So that all fell down. So if it's lucky, see, I was over on the candy counter, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get out, you know. I'd have had all that stuff on top of me.
Stock clerk Larry Levesque is also lucky. Not only has he survived the fire flash in the boiler room, but the explosion has thrown him clear of heavy debris collapsing into the basement. And he is not alone.
And then when I came to, was all black, and I was in a shock and had a real bad pain in my back. And then Mr. Halford says, "Larry, where are you?" I said, "I'm right here. How are we going to get out of here?" And I said, "This way." And Mr. Halford followed me out.
So do the two workmen, Ingram and Schramm, who have also escaped serious injury. But there are those who are unable to get out on their own. Salesgirl Patricia Graves is on the second floor when the explosion occurs. When she wakes up, she is in the basement.
You could see the ceiling gone. I was covered from my neck down. I just kept hearing the people screaming underneath me. Some were crying "Mommy," some were crying "Daddy," and some were just praying, you know.
Off-duty policeman Peter Varga is one of those who answers the call for help.
I went inside, and just then they were bringing a gentleman out on the stretcher. And I remember looking down at him, and half his chest was blown off.
Reporter Walter McCall is also inside, picking his way through smoke and debris.
We could hear voices and screams and so at the back of the store where the lunch counter had been. Everything had fallen more or less down into the basement.
While the walls of the store remain intact, a V-shaped hole has been created by the collapsed main floor and roof. It will come to be called the Pit by those searching for survivors.
I climbed down in that hole, which was like a bowl, and that's where I worked for the pretty much the whole time there. It was just a kind of a blur. He just went from one to the next. And to this day, I can't tell you how many of the people I dug out of there were dead or alive.
My face was swollen and, blood all over the place. And I was looking for the store, but I couldn't recognize nothing, and you could see nothing but dust and dirt flying.
The injured are rushed to nearby hospitals by ambulance, police car, and private vehicle. Others wait anxiously on the street for loved ones still missing. Eileen Bea is safe with her children, but tries to go back inside.
I had to get my mother. I just simply had to get her. I screamed and hollered for my mother, and it was so dark. I can't remember how long it took before they brought my mother up, and she was walking, but she was absolutely distraught.
In one of the hospitals, Kathleen Hebert wakes up looking for her baby. Word gets back to the disaster site, and volunteers go back into the store basement. Peter Varga is one of them.
So I'm crawling on my hands and knees. There's water and debris on the floor. I shone the spotlight and I could see an object in the water floating. It looked like a baby. My heart just started skipping a beat. I go, oh my God. And I got up to it and I grabbed this baby, pulled it out of the water. It was one of those baby dolls. They said, Mama.
Not long afterwards, rescuers are told that the baby has been found safe with his grandmother at another hospital. Rescue efforts continue until late Tuesday, when the Windsor fire chief declares the site unsafe and suspends operations. After spending the day rescuing people from the wreckage of the Windsor department store, an exhausted Walter McCall has one more job to do. When he arrives at the Windsor Star, he finds that his city editor has been looking for him since the story broke.
And I remember Bob looked at me and said, where the hell have you been? And I said, well, I've been in that store. I said, what store? So the one that blew up. His eyes wide. Wow, So he said, right. But first, don't wash your hands yet. Get your picture taken. I sat down in front of my typer and started hammering it out, page after page after page.
A few days later, the last body is recovered from the rubble, bringing the official death count to 10, with over 100 injured. All of the dead are at the rear of the store at the time of the explosion, including waitress Anne-Marie Proteus, who dies at the scene. It is discovered during the inquest that heating contractor Charles Ingram was working without a city permit, although he had made the application for one. And when he and his assistant Howard Schramm uncoupled the main line to the meter, they were breaking strict gas company regulations. As to why the workmen failed to smell an odor while others could, one expert testifies that natural gas can act as an anesthetic on the nose and reduce a person's ability to detect it.
He said it never failed him, but it did. The gas was leaking probably all morning, from around 10:30.
Several witnesses agree with that theory. A gas company engineer testifies that since the store drew air from the boiler room, gas likely seeped into the rest of the building, possibly through the elevator shaft and stairwells. A civil engineer who studies the ruins testifies that he believes the gas was actually ignited in the kitchen next door to the boiler room, sparked by stoves and equipment motors. In the end, the coroner's jury finds negligence on the part of the heating contractors, the gas company, and the city of Windsor. Criminal charges are later brought against the two workmen, who are given suspended sentences and have their licenses revoked. The explosion is the worst gas disaster in Ontario's history. The Metropolitan is rebuilt and opens just short of a year after the explosion.
I never went back there. I just quit the Metropolitan store. I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I didn't want to go back.
To have my 2 children and my mother in that building, in that basement, when that building blew up, and to walk out of it, it just blows me away. I can't believe that we were that fortunate.
Today, Metropolitan stores have gone the way of most five and dimes, victims not of disaster, but of changing economic climate. The memory of that day in 1960 is fading, but even those who try will never completely forget.
A lot of people remember it, but yeah, I'm ashamed to say, but I try to block it out, and I have, because you see, you can't live with this, thinking about this all the time. You go crazy.
It's just one of those hellish things that happens that you're thrust into, and you find you can perform. You develop strength and a sense of mission that you might not know you have till you're thrown into something like that.